single-family residential. Okay, there we go. All right, thank you. All right, Ms. Baker, did you have anything to add or to share with us about this application?
Sure, I'll introduce this project. So this is a request to rezone a small portion of a property that's currently zoned CR, critical areas. It is south of Mossy Creek Elementary School and runs parallel to West Five Notch Road. This would be the first step in the process to do a townhome development in the adjacent parcel. That parcel is currently outside of the city limits and would need to be zoned at the time of annexation. The applicant is seeking to rezone this CR portion to provide access to the future townhome development. So this is just the first step in a multi-phase process.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Ms. Baker? Hearing none, is there a representative from the applicant to present? Thank you. If you could please, when you come forward, give your name and address.
My name is James Dean. I'm with Cranston Engineering at 452 Ellis Street, Augusta, Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Dean.
Yeah, Cully has introduced it pretty well. I mean, there's about 2.7 acres that we would like to get rezoned from CR to R7 to allow for some development of townhomes and access into this property that's just south of Mossy Creek Elementary. You know, the CR extended up the strip that the city currently owned all the way to the school. The CR, as you know, is reserved for wetland, environmentally sensitive areas. There is a pocket of wetland that does extend up that leg, but it ends about halfway up the frontage of that property. And we're just asking for that portion on the north side to be rezoned.
All right. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Mr. Dean?
Help me with a mind's eye. You said it extends halfway up there. Is the topography going up here where the water just will not?
It is. There's a creek on the low side, like if you see, and I know you have this in front of you, but you can kind of see, you can see the floodplain here. That follows along the creek on the low side, and there's a couple of finger of wetlands that extend up into the property north of the creek. And, you know, the portion that the city, within the city limits, was on CR. There are some other fingers that extend up into the county portion, but that's.
So the area that you're going to be trying to get a little utility out of, those are not going to be in the floodplain?
Right, yeah, the development's gonna stay out of the floodplain.
Commissioner Hopperson, your microphone and lean into it.
Pulling up the concept plan is so when that CR is as staff recommendation is to get that just the north portion of it.
Yep.
That would affect this concept plan. Is that this isn't going to
Well,
current?
Commissioner, Harbison, I've got a plan that shows an updated layout that shows us out of that. If it's okay, I'd
Yes.
like to approach and.
Yeah, please.
give you a copy of this.
Thank you.
But you can see on that plan below what we're calling block 14, you can see the wetlands that extend up in there. So we've stopped. That falls within that 2.72. We've stopped.
So if you go to page 19 and you don't have this, but you have page 19, that actually just shows what you want, right? Proposed zoning map.
That is correct, yes.
So if we look at that, you're just asking to have the beigey gold used as you did on 16, 15, and 14, right?
Correct.
So you're only here to ask for half, basically.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
How does that affect the number of units?
Well, due to the presence of wetlands that we have recently found, we went from significant, I can't even remember what the old concept was.
107, I think.
Yeah, 107 down to 61 on the current plan. But again, this concept plan is currently in flux. We're still trying to make sure that it makes financial sense for the developer. But that area that we're asking to be rezoned, I mean, that's pretty much concreted in. We wouldn't come back asking for more.
You can build in a floodplain, you can't build in a wetland. So,
Right.
correct?
Yes. Well, yes, that is correct.
So you wouldn't seek to build in a floodplain with the,
No, we would not. We would not propose to build in the floodplain here. You know, building in the floodplain opens up the door for a lot of extras and expense, like that you look down in Hammond's Ferry, you know, everything's elevated, you have openings in the crawl space. Yeah, we're not looking to build. In the topography here along the creek, it's pretty defined. It doesn't make sense to even get down that far. So yeah, in the wetland, we're not, at this time, we are not trying to impact wetlands because the costs associated with that also can make things cost prohibitive.
So, I read all this, but I don't remember this or whether or not. Is this gonna be 1 stories or 2 stories?
Single story.
Okay, so, I'm just asking, could you not switch off to some of them being a 2-story and get more pieces in the pie?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what when I mentioned earlier, that this is still somewhat in flux. I mean, we're
I mean,
going
I
to look
just-
at it a little bit further to drive up some lot yield, staying within the what would be ultimately the R7 zoning.
Right,
But yeah, that's definitely something the developer would consider.
so are these gonna look like Whiteley Place, Retreat, what are they? I was just trying to figure out how
Right.
you might get a third more.
Are there any other questions for the applicants from the commissioners?
have y'all developed a price point?
What we say?
So if you could, please repeat in the mic so that people
Yeah.
know, because otherwise it's just
Yeah,
like.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, we have not finalized the plan, so it would be heavily dependent on product, and without knowing exactly what product and how many, the price point would be hard to come by right now. But a product very similar to Whiteley Place if it were townhomes, and then the price point for those being with inflation the way it is and material prices, I mean, obviously it would be higher than that. So.
So Retreat is newer, so what's the average cost in Retreat? Just to answer his question.
Okay, again, if you could either come up to the mic or repeat, please.
240,
Okay, thank
240 in the retreat.
Thank
Sorry.
Right.
You mentioned that there were some fingers from the adjoining wetlands that would merge into this piece. Are there any implications to the remaining wetlands from the construction that you all will be doing?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We are planning to stay out of the environmentally sensitive areas. They're just like, the concept that's included in your packet was just a representative of the wetlands when we found them. We had a concept, we located the wetlands, found out that it was a lot more intrusive than we thought, and that's why we came back with a revised concept. Yeah. Staying out of those areas.
All right, if there are no other questions for Mr. Dean, I'll open it up for public comments or questions, and if there are questions from the public, then we'll ask you to come back up to respond. Thank you. All right, I'm going to open it up for public comments or questions. If there are any, please step to the microphone, give your name and address, and we'll have all questions at one time, and then ask Mr. Dean to come back to respond, if any. Okay. There being none, commissioners, open it up for discussion or a motion on this rezoning from CR to R7?
This could probably wait, but I'm just curious, when the property is annexed into the city, what zoning does it take on at that point? And then would the CR be associated with the wetlands when that happens, or will it all be R7? How does that process work?
So tonight you'll make a recommendation to rezone that portion of the parcel from CR to R7 that will go to city council. The annexation request will have to come back before this board because they're looking for R7 zoning. And go over to our future land use map, shows this as large lot, a low-density residential, which would be R14. So because they're not asking for R14, it'll come back to you all. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
I mean, that property's been sitting there for a zillion years to me, and they're trying to make it into something. They've been pretty successful with what they've done. And we've got a lot of wetlands now in town. Almost every piece of property that we're seeing now is going to have wetlands. We saw that, in Chanticleer. We saw that on Martintown Road. We saw that in Knollwood. I mean, it's everywhere is wetlands. We're going to have a lot of wetland talk.
Any other comments or a motion?
I guess the only comments I would have, additional comments, would be the effect on the floodway, on those streams down below, as far as the runoff, and because I'm sure it's going to be just leveled and built as normally we see now. Currently, there's no, it's just all mass grading, and then the runoff going back into that floodway, which is very prone to flooding just during heavy storms. At least if there's vegetation there and things like that, that does hold up some of the flow. But that would be my only concern as far as the development itself. That area, I travel that road at least twice a day, and it is prone to flooding just with heavy rain. And if we add more just flat land to it with asphalt pavement, then the runoff there is going to be very critical, and we need to be very careful of that if we approve this project.
And Ms. Baker, the city is comfortable with?
Yes, the city's stormwater department, as you can see, went out and walked the site after a rain event, and they're comfortable with the rezoning for that one portion of the CR. The engineer will have to work with the stormwater department to make sure that they're handling their runoff correctly.
So going through the process, all of those things, all those pieces will be fitted together to make sure everything is kosher.
Correct.
That was my understanding.
Right. After we get through this rezoning and annexation, the final site plan that they develop will have to meet all of those standards for the stormwater department.
And talking amongst each other, I was asking the price point, and I was looking back at some of the things we should consider, and we always kind of overlook the affordable housing piece. And so that was my question as to what the price point was aimed at that mainly, not necessarily, it was not a curiosity. It was mainly, are we going to be able to get any affordable housing? And with the inflation, I don't know if we can get, it's getting harder and harder. So we're going to have to get creative as and invite more so than accept someone that may be able to assist in North Augusta affordability. So that's basically motivated my question.
Sorry. A quick question. Just help me understand timeline for annexation and bringing all this back to us again, expectations for all of that,
Sure.
process.
I would expect for it to be a multi-month process just because the way our schedule is laid out. So after this, we'll send your recommendation to city council. They would have to have 2 readings on the rezoning, and the applicant can then submit for annexation when they're comfortable with that, and depending on when they get their application in, we'll advertise a public hearing, it'll come back to you all. So we're past the May deadline, so we're probably looking at June before they could even come in with the annexation request. So we could be well into the summer before we see site plans that we're reviewing.
So, and there will be a second public hearing related to the annexation for anybody that's concerned about.
It will be an open meeting, but it's not a public hearing.
Right.
And my only follow-up to that is, Ms. we asked in the joint meeting with City Council for there to be some guidelines or some direction around what's the return on investment for annexation, and so what hurdles need to be passed for it to make financial sense for the city to annex certain properties in. So with the time schedule that you laid out, hopefully we'll have some of that feedback or that information available to help us.
Looking for a motion
Yes, sir.
in regards to application RZM 22-001, a request by Blackstone Development to rezone 2.7 acres located on West Five Notch Road from critical area to an R7. I'd like to make a motion to move to City Council for approval.
All right. Do I have a second?
A second.
Haven't been moved in a second. Any other questions? Further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Thank you. All right, so next up is application RWN 22-001, a request by Parker Augusta LLC to assign the street names Hydrangea Road, Leo Crossing, Gillette Place, Ethan Court, and Calvin Terrace in the River Falls apartment complex located at 1122 West Martintown Road, TPN 001-20-02-006. All right. All right. Ms. Baker, do you have anything to share before we get to the public hearing part?
Just to give you some background, we approved this apartment complex, our planning commission did, back in 2018. And we assigned a temporary address off of West Martintown Road. Now that they are getting ready to get this project off the ground, we need to be able to assign individual addresses to each apartment unit. There aren't enough numbers in that West Martintown range, so now we're coming back and requesting for the driveways to be given names. So these are the names that the applicant has selected. They're not here tonight, but they're for you to review so that we can assign those addresses appropriately.
All right. Are there any questions from Ms. Baker with regards to the information she shared before I open it for public hearing? All right. The applicant is not here, but we will open up this application for a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that has some comments they'd like to share with the commission with regards to this application? There being none, we will close the public hearing portion. And commissioners, discussion and/or a motion on the street names as reflected in the agenda.
I assume with them not present, they are okay with the names.
They have selected these names with Aiken County addressing.
And we are making a motion for approval, correct?
Yes, for approval of these
Um,
names.
In reference to application RWN 22-001, I'd like to make a motion for approval of the mentioned names on this application.
Second. Second.
I've been moved and seconded. Any other questions, discussion? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
We remain busy. I don't have much to add other than the data that you have on your paper. We are going to be resuming some of the Development Code Rewrite Committee meetings soon. I think there's one planned for next week. So that'll be moving forward. We're getting closer to having the chapters rewritten, and soon we'll begin having some planning commission review and then some public input sessions as well.
And with that, depending on, I guess, how it's presented and broken up, we may resume study sessions, but we'll see what the agenda and what the volume looks like. All right. So again, as always, we appreciate you standing in for
Thank
Mr.
you.
Paradise, and we appreciate you all's hard work every day. So it is nice to be able to thank you publicly
Thank you.
for all that you have done, which is, you've done a lot. And so with all of the transitions, we appreciate you
Thank you.
and are grateful for all of your hard work. All right. That being said, I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment, please.
So move.
And with that, we will adjourn. And thank you all, and see you next month.
Got some quick meetings.